Welcome to We Really Need to Talk, the show where we explore how we can meet our fundamental basic human needs, and we explore that through the often embarrassing times where I didn't have my needs met. And here we go. Joy, that's a nice one to start with. We all have a need for joy as human beings, and someone that has a lot of joy in their lives is Master Gu, my Tai Chi master. And that's one of his great gifts that he gives his teachers. Something to know about joy is that it's a practice, it's a habit, it's something that we can cultivate, like basically anything. You know, as human beings, we are creatures of habit. And so what we do repeatedly, we become. And so, if we get stuck in anxiety, our brain chemistry can get used to that chemistry of anxiety. If we choose joy, then over time, we can recognize the beauty in life. We can find more joy more easily. Some funny examples from Master Gu and his inspiring joy is that when he would break an egg, he would do it like this. Tai Chi master on a Taoist mountain, breaking an egg on his forehead. Very funny. And sometimes he would miss high fives. Something that gives me joy in my life is climbing trees. I find it a very playful, fun practice, particularly if I am in a city, because it's an awesome place for people watching, because basically nobody looks up. It's amazing. Like sometimes I would have my coffee in one hand, trying to scale a tree, and then I'd sit with my coffee and just watch the world go by. Guess who are the only people that would ever look up? Children. Children are the ones that still have this lightness, which is why they can find joy more easily. So, what gives you joy? An important question for us in our lives. We deserve joy. It's something that can be cultivated. It's a powerful energy, not only inspiring our lives, but the people around us, and then ultimately the collective healing journey that we're on as a species. And so feeling joy is something that we can give ourselves. It's not indulgent to feel joy. Welcome back if you're just joining to We Really Need to Talk, the show where we explore how we can meet our fundamental deep needs, told through the often embarrassing times where I didn't have my needs met. And yeah, got a need for care. Care makes me think of the fact that care and who gets care is something that can change based on culture. You can maybe argue that you can mark the moral evolution of our species by the amount of people that we include in our circle of care. So going from just the tribe, my people, my tribe, they're the only people that are real people that are worthy of care and respect. And then, as our arguably moral progress expands, we consider other people in our countries, even, the homeless people, the immigrants, or, the people that normally, for certain parts of cultures, they will discount as not being valuable and not having care. And then I would argue that really the healing journey that we need to go on as a species to survive this century and to thrive is to extend the circle of care and compassion, firstly to humanity as a whole, that all human beings, we have the same basic needs to be loved and to be in connection. And yes, we are in different countries and cultures, and that can lead to violence and differences, but ultimately, we're human beings and deserve respect and care. Then, something that has been happening more and more is extending our care to beyond just our species and to extend it to life itself. And I want to share one story from my life where that need for care for other species came through naturally, and what that maybe teaches us about what care is, what it means to be human. So I'm out fishing with a friend of my dad's. It's a sunny day. There's a roaring river. I'm out in nature. I'm 10 years old. I'm loving it. However, it's all great until we actually catch a fish and we drag the fish up. This flippy, scaly, shiny being is fighting for its life. My dad's friend wrestles the fish and picks it up and starts bashing it against the fence, and then takes out something called a crucible and then stabbing holes in this fish. There's blood oozing from it. And for me as a 10-year-old, it's all too much. I'm just seeing this living being suffering, and I start crying my eyes out, and I run, and we're staying at my dad's friend's house, and I run because I know mum's back at the house, but it's 2 miles away. So my tears, they dry up, and then eventually I make it back to my mum and start crying again for the attention and say, "Mum, they killed the fish." Oh, so traumatic. So, for meat eaters or fishermen, maybe you're thinking, man up, don't be so sensitive. And, that's an interesting little thing that we do. Like children have this natural inclination that other species, they're alive, they suffer like we do, and they deserve care like we do. But that natural care that we're born with is educated out of us. Don't be so sensitive, man up. It's just a fish. And so that stayed with me as an experience, and I've been vegetarian/vegan for most of my life, and feel energized. And brings this question around then, what does a caring society look like? For me, it feels quite unarguable that factory farming shouldn't be a thing. Like a pig, just as intelligent as a dog, social being, creative if allowed the chance, is stuck in a container, not able to move for its whole life, stuffed with antibiotics. It's really cruel and inhumane, and nobody sees the suffering that we inflict. All we see is the piece of bacon. And when I was 16, I did have a piece of bacon, and I must admit I really enjoyed it. So we disassociate, it's bacon, it's not pig, it's just some food in a plastic wrapping, and we don't connect with the suffering that has happened in that process. Another question though, so like suffering of animals, animal farming, in my book's quite unarguable, just deeply immoral, and free range on organic food, it costs more, but that's because it's honoring that this is a sentient being. Another question we could ask is killing wrong? I mean, if we look to nature, there's killing everywhere. There's cooperation, but also competition. And as hunter-gatherers, we, over history, needed to kill in order to survive. We've got these canine little sharp teeth. That's because we would rip meat off the bone. And so to say that killing is wrong, I'd say I don't think we could argue that. And for the tradition that I trained in Taoism, in China, there's two schools of Taoists. There's those that eat meat, and then those that are vegetarian. And those that eat meat justify it, saying, well, killing is part of nature. If you think about indigenous American tribes, or indigenous tribes anywhere, that they would kill a deer, say, but they would often do ceremonies of gratitude that this deer has given the gift of their life in order to support more life. And so with that gift honoring of this living being, I feel then there is an energetic exchange that can take place. It's not just this pig isn't a living creature, we can just confine it, make it into a factory input, and then make it into slices of bacon. For me, that feels deeply immoral. And let me know your thoughts. So killing for me doesn't seem by itself necessarily bad, but here we are in the modern world, And we have the great gift of modern capitalism, which, has given us some things that we can celebrate, which is for me, avocados when I'm in Britain, a healthy source of fat, and tofu, source of protein. And so as a vegan, I can live with loads of energy, loads of protein, loads of healthy food, and I don't need to kill in order to live. And so for me, and you make your own choices, that I don't need meat and I don't eat it because I don't want to cause more suffering. I have killed animals since. When I was 10 years old, I had the fish and I ran away, but when I was 18, I worked in a sheep farm and I did kill a sheep, blood going everywhere. And I do think that is important. Like if you are a meat eater, and hey, this is just my view, that if you can't kill an animal, then I don't know if you should be eating. Because why can't you kill an animal? Because you care? Because you sense the sentience of that creature? And yet you're not honoring that creature with, I'm taking your life in order to nourish mine. So I hope what I've shared there, is we've got this need for care, and I'd argue that the moral evolution of our species is expanding the circle of care to include more and more beings, to life itself. And even if we care for something, as we've been exploring, we can still kill with care and honoring and with a gift. If, that killing does then lead to our own lives, I'd argue that isn't the case for most of us. But this is maybe a more nuanced position than you would hear from the militant vegans, that, I think we can, in this conversation around meat, can find a bit more compassion and a bit more ease around how we talk about it. One more example is that, I've talked to people who were ill being vegetarian, and then every so often would have a ritual, have some meat, and then feel recharged and literally feel that meat energizing them, because it is a concentrated form of energy. And so in my world, sometimes that could be appropriate. But that's a world away from the current world where we kill billions of sentient beings in torturous conditions, and we don't talk about it. And I think it's one of the great crimes of our age that we can look back on. So let's get your thoughts on that. So BC sharing, a truly caring society, humans don't kill anyone or anything. And just the the challenge with that, and one of the challenges I have with Buddhism is that one of the precepts of Buddhism is don't kill living beings. But then what about the plants, right? So are plants not living beings? Obviously they're alive, they're living beings, we share 50% of our DNA with them. Do they feel pain? No, not to my knowledge. They don't have nervous systems like we do. Like you torture a pig when it's hanging from its leg as it's getting butchered in one of these factory farms. It's screaming for its life, and that scream, if we hear it and allow ourselves to hear it, curdles our heart and mind, because that scream is familiar, because we are family with the other animals. And so that pain, that suffering is something that feels wrong. But we do kill plants in order to eat them. So I think that's another example where we can't have that kind of hard like don't kill, because it's then discounting the plants that we share the planet with as well. This is another great example. So Tibetan Buddhists, good luck trying to grow crops at 4,000, 5,000 meters. The Tibetan Buddhists, they did need to eat meat because they would eat goats on the high Tibetan plateau. And so that even in Buddhism, there is some flexibility. To treat animals with love and respect is okay if eating meat, but immoral treatment must stop. Yeah, it's not about the plant being alive, but what has high levels of consciousness indeed. Yeah, if an animal could live pleasant long lives, I'd feel better about eating animals. Yeah. So, these important conversations, and if you grew up in a meat-eating family, sometimes you've had years of conditioning that your body needs meat, and it could be less meat, meat-free Mondays, meat-free Tuesdays, having meat once a week. Like in our own healing journey, it's a journey. It's not just a binary yes or no. And sometimes we can say, right, oh, that's it, I'm quitting meat. And great, that's awesome. But if that then isn't sustainable, then less meat, not eating meat in the house, only when you're going out. And then when you're going out, having less. Let's get back to our needs, shall we? Well, welcome back to We Really Need to Talk. Really bad puns. We've got many more puns to come. This game is where we explore our fundamental human needs and how we can meet them, and often through the stories of where I have or haven't met my own needs. We have a need for self-acceptance. Like, here you are, a human being with unique gifts, and here I am, a unique human being. Nobody has your fingerprints, nobody has your voice, nobody has your experiences. You are a unique constellation of 37 trillion cells, and the product of that is vastly more than the sum of its parts. And all of us deserve self-acceptance, to meet ourselves with kindness. And yet, I can speak to say that that is challenging, and maybe you found it challenging as well. I want to share with you a fun practice where you can build your confidence in yourself. And like joy, self-confidence and self-acceptance is a practice. What we do repeatedly, we become. And so a fun time and a fun practice you can do to build your self-acceptance is to do something slightly weird in front of other people. Feel the self-consciousness, do it anyway. A great example is walking backwards. So walking backwards, if you don't know, is a great way to develop strength in your tibialis, your shins, which then reduces knee pain. And every time I walk up a hill, I walk up backwards. And if you can do it for 10 minutes a day, it's a really fun practice for you. And you get the added benefit of raising your confidence, because if there's people looking at you and you're walking up backwards up a hill, and this happened to me once where I was walking up a hill in a park, and not only was I walking backwards, I was doing my vocal warm-ups and doing the Gong swimming move. And this is me, like if you ever see me walking around, I'm doing my voice stuff and I'm walking backwards. When suddenly, in this park, a shaggy dog comes up and he starts going crazy, barking at me. And the owner cries out, "He's just saying what we're all thinking." Which I thought was a very witty one-liner, very funny. He's just saying what we're all thinking. And this is just me, you do you differently, but I love moments like that. I find that very funny. And yeah, I like being weird and feeling the self-consciousness. And if you've been doing your Tai Chi or any practices, and like I love and invite you to do Tai Chi in nature. And if you in the city, go to a park and just breathe and move your body. And yeah, you'll probably, like I have throughout my life, felt some self-consciousness, but more and more I can breathe into it. And just here I am. This is me, and I accept myself for my weirdness. And that's a practice. So actually, if you actively choose to be weird and then feel the fear, do it anyway. And yeah, keep going. Keep growing. Welcome, if you're just joining to We Really Need to Talk. We're back at self-acceptance. All right, self-acceptance. So, feeling not enough. Shame, self-judgment. I'm not beautiful enough, I'm not successful enough, I'm not worthy of connection, of love, of respect. You know, these are thoughts that are quite familiar as human beings, and I've experienced my fair share of that. Not enoughness. Like a few years ago when I work for myself and don't really meet anyone physically, and so I can find it quite hard to find connection. And I'm going on dating apps, judging myself for not having any dates and judging other people, really not enjoying that process. And I would notice stories within me, well, if I just work out more, if I just have a better body, then I'll be handsome enough and good enough to meet someone that inspires me. Or with friendship, if I just keep working on myself, I'll become confident enough, funny enough to find the friends that really inspire me. So I want to share with you a 4-step process for feeling like we're enough right here, right now. Because all of that not enoughness is totally unnecessary, it's painful, and it's like when we actually do connect with somebody in a romantic relationship or in friendships, we are always meeting them where we are in that present moment. Two beings coming together, and if there's a resonance, if there's a friendship, if there's a relationship, it's because you two were the match at that specific point in time. You couldn't have been anyone else except from who you were. And so this whole craving of like, I need to improve myself in order to be enough is not only unnecessary, but then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy where, yes, in my early 20s, I'm awkward and not very social, so I'm just not good enough. And that would then close me from having connection. It's not necessary. And here are 4 big ideas that have helped me to find a bit more self-acceptance, a bit more peace. So it's the ABCD. If you've followed me in previous sessions, I always have really bad acronyms, but we've actually got a good one this time. The ABCD of feeling enough right now. All right, A is acknowledge the complexity and beauty of being a human being. The Taoists in ancient China, they have this concept called pu, which is not the thing that comes out on the toilet. It's a concept that refers to the uncarved form of nature has a beauty. So if you're walking on a beach and you find some driftwood, what's the driftwood that you might take home? It's not the straight plank. It's instead the wiggly, gnarly bit of root, and you're like, wow, that's cool. So wood in its uncarved form has a beauty, has a perfection in the imperfection. And here we are as human beings with all the complexities, maybe trauma from our upbringings and challenging tendencies for anxiety, for judgment, for anger, for blame, and, keyword, and so much beauty. A human body, 37 trillion cells, breathing 20,000 times a day, allows you to move and to think and to enjoy art and to maybe do some Tai Chi, maybe laugh. Can we acknowledge the complexity and beauty of our being right here, right now? Can we extend compassion to the complexity, the challenging aspects of ourselves? Compassion is super, super powerful, and it's one of the main things that I share on the channels, that I'm not a Shaolin monk, and my taskmaster part within me sometimes criticizes me like, oh, you should be perfectly at peace at all times, George. You've been on your meditation journey for 8 years and you should just always be relaxed. And then when I'm not relaxed, I judge myself. But what really helps me is just, here I am, I'm a human being, and I get anxious sometimes, and that's cool, that's me. And I hope that in any sessions that you join with me, I can just help be your cheerleader. Like, here you are, you're this unique being. Nobody's ever been like you, no one ever will be. And yeah, you and I, we have bits of ourselves that maybe we wouldn't want in a perfect world. But actually, can we see the perfection in the imperfection? That we have this uncarved form, a beauty that comes from our being. Talking about being, we go on to be, which is to be. So we're on a 4-step journey to try and feel like we're enough, to meet our deep needs for self-acceptance. And one thing that you may notice is a self-evaluator. So another part of my psyche is a self-evaluator who, it's like he's got a timeline starting from my birth to my death, and like I'm here, and he says, George, you really at this age should be here. You should be more successful, you should be more at peace, and you should have a relationship, you should have more money. He's listing out all the things that I don't have. And then I start, evaluating, how am I doing? And, when I'm feeling good, it's like, I'm feeling happy. And if I'm, caught in a bit of judgment, okay, I'm caught in judgment. And what I find really liberating to help me with this is, instead of evaluating good or bad, I am happy, I'm off track, is just, when you notice those evaluations, is just to say, I am. I am. Can we rest in our being? We are human beings after all, not human doings. Can we rest in presence? And this is the great gift that meditation gives us, is that we notice thoughts and painful emotions, and through the breath we can come back to presence and let it go and just be here. And this is, for me, a deeply spiritual experience. And if you've been on a meditation journey, then you maybe have had glimpses of this. And what do I mean by spiritual is just simply an awareness and a recognition of the miracle of being. Like, here I am, a conscious, thinking, breathing, laughing, crying miracle of the universe. I am an aperture through which the universe is coming to know itself. Consciousness embodied. And if I can find moments of quiet between thoughts and to just rest, to reconnect with that miracle that I am and that you are, then, wow, what a release. This whole needing to be enough, evaluating, can I accept myself? Maybe we don't need to believe in ourselves. Rumi, great Sufi mystic, has a beautiful quote on this. He said, I stopped believing in myself a long time ago. I used to worry about this great pearl that I was looking after and cultivating, and I was always really careful with it and evaluating how valuable it was. But then one day when I stopped believing myself, I realized that I was one pearl in a streaming current of pearls, and I lost which one was mine. It no longer mattered. So I love that. Stop believing in yourself. These evaluations, like, am I doing okay? Am I doing enough? Am I enough? It's just, I am. Anytime I notice those evaluations now, I am. Come back to presence, rest in being. So we're on a 4-step journey to self-acceptance, right here, right now. No ifs, no buts, no whens. Stage 1 was to acknowledge the complexity of being a human. Step 2 was to just be, rest in being. Step 3 is to acknowledge the components of life, of our psyches, of our hearts and minds. This has been probably the biggest, most powerful tool on my healing journey, is seeing myself in terms of parts. I've already named some of them: the self-evaluator with the checklist, and the taskmaster, who's the productivity nut. It's like, work harder, contribute to the healing of the planet. Other parts within my psyche are Georgie. Georgie's my playful part that wants to be in connection. I now imagine in my mind's eye all of my parts sitting in a circular table. And then there's my wise self, my compassionate self, who is the leader. It's like a council meeting. And so, yeah, I can hope you can imagine the power and the difference between I don't feel enough, I feel inadequate. It's very different from there's part of me that feels not enough. There's part of me that thinks I'm inadequate. Huge difference from, I am lonely to there's a part of me that's lonely. I'm not beautiful. There's a part of me that thinks I'm not beautiful. Because then we can begin to evaluate. It's not just I am, we haven't identified with it. It's like, okay, what's here? There's a part of me. Which part is that? Who's saying that? And I invite you now or today or later to, begin to write down, like, what are my different parts? The underminer is my inner critic. And then sit them down in your mind's eye, imagining yourself leader, and begin to look at the components of who you are. And then you can evaluate, okay, is this need for self-acceptance really coming from a place of wisdom, or is it just a part of me that's actually got another unmet need that I can attend to with more groundedness? Step 4 is to recognize that the things that we haven't done in our life doesn't make us inadequate right now. And we can instead see them as open doors or unopened doors. So this is an idea that came from Dong Ming Dao, which I found really helpful, is that, so I haven't connected romantically with someone for a while, and, that previously was then I'm not enough and this is painful for me. Now I see that, okay, a partner is an unopened door, and there are many doors and I can't step through them all at the same time. And so I've got to choose, and I trust that, okay, when the time is right, I will step through that door. And just because I haven't stepped through that door doesn't make me not enough. So 4 steps for feeling enough for right now: meeting our deep need for self-acceptance, acknowledge the complexity of being human, just be, rest in being, see yourself in terms of components and parts, and then see the things that you haven't done in your life yet as open doors that don't define you. Just don't believe someone can teach you something if they're not whole within themselves. And I would invite the wholeness comes from recognizing the complexity, that there's still challenge within being a human being. You've got the Eckhart Tolles in the world who become enlightened and then live in peace and have this deep sense of peace throughout their lives. And I really like Eckhart Tolle's teachings. I think they give a lot of freedom and possibility that we can break out of our limiting beliefs. But I also think that the vast, vast majority of people aren't just able to do that. And I'm a human being that more and more I feel, deeply more and more grounded and joyful and at peace in my life from the work that I've done. And yet it's still a journey, step by step. And I invite wholeness to, even the bits when I can find things challenging. So we're just going to keep going. Respect. Nice. So as human beings, we have a need for respect, to feel like people treat us with consideration, with dignity, that they, honor and respect our humanity. And yeah, it can be challenging when we don't have that need met, and yeah, people don't treat us with respect. And I want to share some ideas around a time where I didn't have my needs for respect met and how I overcame that. So I was in school and I was 16, just gone to a new school, and I was the lonely kid in this school. And it was kind of something like out of an American high school film. You had the jocks, who were the rugby players. You had the beautiful girls who played hockey and they hung out with the jocks. Then you had the nerds, and then you had the music kids. And then I'd come from a state school. This was a grammar school, and I was just kind of this kid that didn't really fit in anywhere. One of the jocks was a big lad, big rugby lad, and he didn't take a liking to me. And when we'd walk past each other in the corridor, he would come and just make little noises and touch me, and just like get in my space. And he didn't show me my need for respect, and this really frustrated me, but I didn't know how to express myself. And so I just kept it bottled within. He kept on doing it, until one day I'd had enough. I just blew. And yeah, I'd come from this state school, and so even though like I'm a middle-class kid, I comparatively was the bad man of the school. And so I suddenly had this newfound energy. I got the bully, this big rugby lad, and I pinned him up against a wall, and I said, "If you ever touch me again, I'll have your guts for garters." Don't know if that's actually what I said, but pinned him up against a wall, expressed my needs, my boundaries. And did he listen? He wasn't listening before. He did. He never touched me again. And so that's a time where somebody wasn't meeting my need for respect, and I took some action to get that need for respect. Now, obviously, ideally, we don't want to be picking people up and putting them up against a wall in order to get our needs for respect met. So I want to share with you some ideas of how we can have our needs met, our boundaries respected without violence. And really, this is what I see as the big part of our collective healing, is that, okay, I got my needs met to protect myself through violence, but there are many, many steps before then to de-escalate and to resolve differences without violence. But it's a skill. It takes practice, it takes training. And so, yeah, here are some steps, 3 or 4, I can't remember, on how to get your needs met. First one comes from Taoism, and the Taoists from ancient China, they really talk about the beauty of yielding, of not contending, of not entering into fights. Your energy is precious, and yeah, maybe you can say, "Excuse me, sir, you did not treat me with respect. I have a need for respect and justice." You could do that, or you could just walk away and conserve your precious energy. There's a classic story of 2 men walking on a narrow path, and they hate each other. They realize when they see each other, worst enemies. And one man comes up and says, "I will not pass way for a pig." And the other man says, "I, by contrast, will. Good day, sir." So you see that, the power of the yield. So is there a conflict in your life that you are just, you are choosing to stay in that conflict when actually your energy is super precious? So yeah, let it go, yield and overcome. That's the thing, you overcome because you don't enter into the energy sapping conflict. But with me and the bully, I was walking away, but he kept on coming back to me. So sometimes we do need to stand and go towards the challenge. Sometimes that total yielding doesn't work. So then the next stage is to communicate our feelings and our needs with groundedness and with skill. And the most powerful framework and training that I think is available on our planet, at least the one that I've explored, is nonviolent communication. Nonviolent communication has been super powerful in my life. I think it's essential life learning for anyone. And it gives you the vocabulary to express your needs and feelings in a way that's likely to be received. So maybe with the bully, I could have said, look, Billy, it's not his name, I see you caring with your mates and, seeing you are kind to them. And I'm really feeling that you're not kind to me, and this is stressful because I have a need for peace. And look, I want to really just ask for your humanity, to see my humanity and meet me with respect. So I'd ask that you just leave me alone. Now, maybe for a bully in a school that might work, could work. Certainly as adults, this does work for a lot of us. Like, say you're in work and your boss is giving you work beyond work hours. Instead of just holding that resentment about my boss doesn't care for me, express it, express it earlier before it gets too big. Like, when you give me work outside of work hours, I find that stressful because I've got the kids back at home, and so I request that you allow me to come to work and work on the stuff the next day without having to check in the evening. Or, conflict in relationships. Develop the ability to express earlier instead of just not expressing. And that's a skill. Stage 3 is to ask for help. So we're on this journey of trying to meet our needs for respect and for people to listen to our boundaries. Sometimes, we don't take that by ourselves. If it's in a work situation, talk to the boss or colleagues. If it's family and friends, call in support. Stage 4 then, I think, is honoring the response. Honoring the response. Like for me, as a 16-year-old boy, I didn't have the skills that I have now to be able to express myself, or the vocabulary. And ultimately, I was getting threatened and attacked. And that anger got me out. Say in like sexual violence or abusive relationships, sometimes that anger can be the energy that gets you out. No. And, gets you out of that situation. Ideally, without the violence being punitive or like trying to destroy another person, but instead to protect oneself. The Taoists, again, they have a chapter where they talk about weapons. They're not the tools of the wise, they are the tools of violence. And anyone that celebrates victory has a will to kill. If you are to win a war, you should celebrate by holding a funeral to mourn the dead. So the Taoists, they are not pacifists. They do believe that, weapons are sometimes necessary, but to never glorify it, to never take enjoyment in it, and absolutely as a last resort. And that's the thing, is like, people say, well, human beings are violent and that's just human nature. They are not acknowledging there's so many steps that we can take before violence is necessary. And so for you and I on our personal healing journey to maybe yield and just get out of the situation, work on nonviolent communication, expressing our needs and feelings, asking for support. There's so much that we can do before needing to go to violence. And that's absolutely true on the collective level as well. So we can get our needs met for respect if we acknowledge each other. All right, let's continue, good friends. Let's complete them all. See how many we can do. Welcome back to We Really Need to Talk, the home of bad puns and talking about... have we done it all? Safety is the last one. All right, let's see if we can get to safety. It's not that random, is it? I've got these stories pre-prepared. One day. All right, we're going to cheat. It's a 50-50 between respect and safety. Who's going to win? It's respect. Let's try it. Who's going to win? Oh, it's safety. Yeah, we've got a need for safety. How do we meet our needs for safety? Hopefully you are like me, to be privileged to not be in a country that's at war, that you have a roof over your head, that you have enough food. And that is a privilege. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't have that. But even with that privilege, throughout our lives, there may be risk of physical violence or emotional violence against us. So how do we protect ourselves? How do we express our boundaries in a way that keeps us safe? We have this deep need for safety. For me, when I meet challenge, like part of my nervous system conditioning is flight and freeze. And part of my upbringing is anger in the family, and freeze is how I would respond to that. I'm not a fighter, and sometimes this would mean that I don't speak up when I need to, and I don't protect myself when I need to. And I had a recurring dream in my teenage years that there was a baddie and I needed to defend my family against the baddie, and I would go to punch to protect the family, but just as I did, I would freeze out of fear. There's something deep in my nervous system that didn't trust my ability to protect. And so that's something that I've worked with, and something that I have felt like I've grown with, is that sometimes we do need to step into the warrior energy. The peaceful warrior holds the shield and protects. It's the boundary holder to protect the family, to protect life. So if you're joining before, we were talking about weapons are the means of last resort. There's so much we can do before weapons, but sometimes we do live in a world where people can be violent, and we need to protect ourselves. And violent, I don't just mean physical violence. It can also be, emotional violence, where, maybe people are so angry and so vengeful that they're giving us all this hate. And can we stay resourced and grounded and not allow that corrupt energy into us? The good news is that this is a skill. So my nervous system is just, I'm a flight or freezer, and it's something that I've been working on. And one of the big things that I've done in my journey to healing this aspect of my psyche is going to men's work retreats and human trauma retreats. If you maybe have been exploring the world of spirituality, you might know about men's work and women's work and the retreats where men do boxing and ritual combat, or they do other activities to stress the nervous system, to do challenging things. And the idea being that when you do that challenge in a safe space, you are reconfiguring your nervous system to be able to deal with that challenge. I went to one retreat, which was not just for men, it was for all human beings. And this retreat was trauma work. So, say somebody unfortunately was abused by their father. This person would come into the circle. We're in a field in England, in the south of England, sun shining, 30 people in a circle in the field, and then one person stepping, expressing their challenge. Got abused by my father. And then another person is then asked to step in, put a cloth over their face to then represent the father, and then this person can express what they needed to say to their father in an embodied way. And it can be really healing to process those words that weren't said and what needs to be moved through in order to heal from trauma. But as you can imagine, this can be really intense, like people releasing anger and rage that has been built up for decades. And for me, my nervous system, when there's big intensity of emotion, goes into fight, flight, or freeze. But that was a real gift, because I was in a safe space, held by the group, 30 people, And so then I could breathe. I could notice, okay, I'm getting triggered, and I can breathe down into my belly and to use my breath work to stay grounded. And I'm really grateful now to, like if I've got my retreat coming up, and there's a few places left if you want to find out about that. I'll link somewhere that in my space holding, if I'm holding a meditation session or Tai Chi, that I feel more and more grounded to, if things do arise, is that the power of love, the power of presence, to not just constantly avoid challenge, but to stay with it, to breathe into it. Whether we're male, female, man, woman, other, that boundary holding, and to stay grounded in the face of adversity is a life skill, and a skill that all of us can develop. And it comes through meeting challenge, seeking the discomfort, breathing into it, training our nervous system that we don't always need to run away from challenge, that we can meet it. And so to finish the story, at the retreat, I did some ritual combat. I had this, as I told you, this recurring dream that I just couldn't protect. And I had a fight with a bold Irish man who was a semi-professional boxer. And here's Tai Chi George, who went to China originally to learn Kung Fu to try and become stronger. But Tai Chi found me, which does resonate with my energy. Like I'm not a fighter. But here I was, ready to enter into the ring and do ritual combat, fighting with someone in a grounded way. And I felt really good, even though I'm a big proponent of non-violence and really hope never to use violence and to develop the skills of compassionate communication. It was still very healing for me to land a punch and to know that I could do that. The Change is Possible project are the retreats that I went to, and I will be going to a lot of them this year. Change is Possible project, if you are in the UK, searching that up. I would love to see you there. But are there retreats that you could go on? If anyone knows in the chat, suggesting names. And that need for safety. So important to feel like we are seen and can protect ourselves. And acknowledging all the beautiful beings that we have been sharing our practice with together. Thank you so much. A short little practice for us to be doing together. Thank you for your presence. Do not take your presence for granted. I'm sending you so many good vibes for your practice, for everything you're working with, for everything that you are. And tomorrow is the last week of the Introduction to Meditation course on Wayfinder Academy. If you would like to join, it is just $17 a month and can support me and the team. We now have 13 in the team, and joining Wayfinder Academy is one of the main ways you can support me. As well as there's 40 hours of transformative education recordings from every course I've done. So if you enjoy exploring with me, then there's a free 7-day trial and you can go see for yourself. And we're live on Zoom tomorrow. Otherwise, there are recordings. I will be here live streaming on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday next week. I will be repeating the similar stories because I'm working on getting more fluent with them. But if you want to join again, same time, we'll see it on the channel. All right, dear friends, gratitude to all of you and sending you my best wishes. Have a fab weekend. Ciao, ciao for now.